Hi everyone. So hopefully you guys are staying safe. I know right now as I speak, I'm looking outside my window here and it is snowing. So I'm actually in Springfield, Illinois for right now. I will be making my way back down to the St. Louis area, hopefully, depending on when me and my fiance find a place to live. But I'll actually be attending SLU Law in the fall. So I'm excited to come back to that area. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jasmine Patton. I am a senior, so I will be graduating May 2020. So I'm excited for that. I'm an organizational communication major and a psychology major with minors in legal studies and a minor in business administration. Um, and so I thought that it would be fun to do a program. And so what I decided to do for mine is a presentation specifically from my senior seminar class titled Political Correctness and What It Was Intended to Be. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Hopefully I get to see your smiling faces sometime soon. And like I said, hopefully you're staying safe and healthy. And without further ado, let's get on to the presentation.
Hi everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with my presentation here. Um, my presentation is specifically on political correctness as it was intended. So I'm obviously not going to be able to cover everything that falls under political correctness, but what I am going to focus on is specifically race, just because I had to cut down to 15 minutes, and also this is kind of the part of political correctness that I have a little bit more insight on, so I feel more comfortable going into that. Um, so here we go. So, what value does your name have? So, most people, if not anyone that I met at McKendree, call me Jazz. It's what I introduce myself as. It's been my nickname for as long as I can remember. No one really questions it when I say that my name is Jazz or thinks twice to say it. To them, it's just my nickname. Um, so, I guess my question is, how are we tying that to political correctness? So I actually found an article on Huffington Post where the author writes, "Call me Steve, not Steven, not Stefan, certainly not Steve Areno. It's my preference, my choice, and if people want to be in my good graces, they'll comply with my wishes." So this statement seems harmless when talking about preferred names and nicknames. To have a preference or to accept something because someone expresses it is what they prefer. So why can this concept not be applied to other aspects of society, such as race, sexual orientation, gender, etc., that is important to someone's identity? It's just a little bit more controversial. To simplify, political correctness is a way of people being able to discuss and share what their preferences are when being referenced and what the specific person or group of people finds offensive. So, what is political correctness? So, I do have our president up here in the right hand corner, and it's not to bash him by any means, it's actually to use this in a way that's kind of educational with political correctness right now. Um, So, what is political correctness? There's no real answer. I guess the reason for that is because there are so many different definitions out there. They vary from the intended definition to what people decide to take political correctness as, I guess is a good way to say it. So there are people out there that oppose political correctness, and according to the Britannica Online Encyclopedia, the reasoning is because they see it as censorship and basically editing freedom of speech that places limits on debates in the public arena, and it perceives offensive language where none actually exists. So, NPR states that politically correct means politically wise or invalid or hypersensitive, showing that there are various feelings behind that term. So, there's some positive and some negative in there. So, the reason that I have our current President Trump up here is actually because um, he's spoken out on political correctness and kind of his views, and his views actually align with a previous president that we had, President Bush, H. Bush, not George W. Bush, but his father. When he was in office, he kind of said some similar things that kind of go along with what people consider the traditional conservative type of people in the US. Um, so Trump said to Fox News' Megyn Kelly, I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, the country doesn't have time either. Um, so kind of where all this originated and where I decided to kind of dive into this is actually because I watched a docu-series on Netflix that's called Explain, and they did an entire series and specifically one episode on political correctness. And so from the Explain docu-series, again, President Trump was referenced. Um, he uses the term in this docu-series anchor babies. Someone that was actually interviewing him kind of corrected him and said, "Hey, we don't use that term because it's really offensive." And so President Trump asked, "Okay, so anchor babies is offensive. What would you suggest I use instead?" And that interviewer actually said, "You could just use babies who are born in the U.S. and who gain citizenship." And Trump's response was, "No, I'll actually just keep using the word anchor baby. It's quicker." Okay. So, is that problematic that he said that? Or is it falling under people being hypersensitive when he said that? I think that's kind of what is important now. Personally, the way that I'm going to take an approach in this specific um, sense is I'm going to say that political correctness is very important, and it's not okay to just simply dismiss it because we don't have time. The way that political correctness was originally intended was kind of where I came up with my own definition just because there isn't a real definition out there. So I have decided for the rest of this specific presentation that political correctness is a way to make sure we are adapting our speech in a way that is appropriate to the times and to those listening. This is the definition that I've developed, and I'm going to go ahead and use that to set the tone for the rest of my presentation. Okay, so we're jumping right in here to where I think I can put the most amount of insight on, which is political correctness and race. So I have two images on the screen here. On the left-hand side, I have a woman whose name was Toni Morrison. She actually was an author and a Nobel Prize winner in 1993. She basically dedicated all of her work to the Black female experience, and so that's why she's kind of very credible when it comes to talking about race and political correctness. So she actually wrote, what I think the political correctness debate is really about is the power to be able to define. The definers want the power to name, and the defined are now taking that power away from them. Uh, so basically, she's saying that political correctness can be used to actually put that power back in those different groups that felt offended or feel a little bit more oppressed in society, kind of give them back some power so that way we can properly address these people. And then on the right hand side here, I have Nairana Wahid, which is actually right now she's blowing up because she's a very influential poet. It's very different than what mainstream is used to. So she actually posts her poetry on Instagram and things like that, but she actually herself doesn't post her pictures anywhere online. So I wasn't able to find a picture of her specifically. But she actually wrote, never trust anyone who says they do not see color. This means to them you are invisible. And so she does poetry specifically that deals with feminism, racial identity, and other controversial topics. So, why are these quotes relevant to today? A lot of people kind of argue, well, hasn't our society changed and learned what's okay and not okay to say and do? The short answer is absolutely not. I think it's very apparent, specifically right now, with some of the things that have been said in the past 4 years, that people obviously are still very much unaware of what is okay to say, what's very offensive, and why we shouldn't say certain things. So, I'm going to pop a picture on the board here and kind of explain it. So this is actually blackface. I found this on the internet. It was also in the documentary that I watched. And for those of you that are unaware of what blackface was, basically it was exaggerating African Americans' different characteristics to kind of make fun of them, but also and kind of make them exaggerated. So as you can see, these are people that are their ethnicity is actually Dutch because they're they're Dutch, and they have painted themselves black and exaggerated their lips and things like that. The sad thing about this is that this was actually not that long ago. This was actually taken in 2018. So this is a Dutch Christmas tradition that they do. Um, which is kind of interesting. So this is taken in 2018, like I said. The Netherlands actually does a celebration for Christmas, and the story behind it is there's a character called Black Pete, or Zwarte Piet, who was the helper of Sinterklaas, or Santa Claus as we call him. So basically, it was Santa Claus's slave, and so they all do blackface in order to kind of keep up with that tradition. I'm sure this is shocking to see because something like that in the US so widespread would definitely not be accepted, but they're still doing it elsewhere. So clearly there's something that needs to be addressed. Now, as more people of color have started to move into this area, they have been raising questions and saying that, hey, this should not be allowed. It's not politically correct, and they're looking into it, but as of right now, they really haven't done anything about it. Okay, so this is actually pertaining specifically to me. So I put up here Negro, colored, black, or African American. Um, so obviously we don't use Negro or colored anymore. However, both of my parents grew up in an era where it was okay for people to call them colored until the 1970s, where African American was introduced, and now we go between black and African American, and which one do we use, and all these different things. So I actually put up on the right hand side here a breakdown of my 23andMe results, because some people were saying if you were a certain amount of African American or of African, then you can claim to be African American. So I'm not really sure that I agree with this. Honestly, Black and African American are pretty much interchangeable, and those are accepted in today. The reason that I say I don't really agree with it is I have also put up here my sister Olivia's reports right next to mine, and then both of our moms on the side here. So the only thing that isn't pictured is my dad, and I do have a different dad than my sister, but it's still pretty apparent that if we're going by these specific results, I'm more sub-Saharan African than them, or more black than them. I'm saying with air quotes around me right now because obviously that is absurd. We are all of the same race and we're all black. So, um it's kind of going into the deal of, okay, well, we're trying to be politically correct and going off of what people are most comfortable with, but what if a whole group of people have different levels of comfortability? What do we do then? That's pretty easy, in my opinion. It's basically just, again, just being cognizant with who's around you. So if someone says that they prefer to be called black, then you call them black. If people say that they would prefer to be called African American, then you call them African American. We just adjust the speech as someone requests it. It's really not that hard. A lot of people also say, well, is it okay to just say both or to just change language as people find it non-offensive? Absolutely. A lot of the forms that we have, especially the census that's coming out in 2020, it says black or African American. Those are the two terms in identity uh, names that people of a certain ethnicity has said that they feel comfortable being classified as. So there's no issue with that there. It's just a matter of being cognizant of what people are comfortable with. That's kind of the main theme with political correctness. What are these people comfortable with? Let's look at why do we not use certain terms? Were they considered derogatory at some point in time? If the answer is yes, then we shouldn't use them anymore. It's pretty simple there. Okay, so what now? I'm kind of just doing a sum up here. So, political correctness is intended to make sure our language and hopefully our thoughts and feelings progress as the times do. Um, so, that's pretty self explanatory. It is not, however, a platform for people to fuss and be offended about everything and anything. It is not all encompassing, it's not one size fits all. It is intended to give people power and a voice when something offends them and to give them a better alternative so that way we know how to address people in a way that's correct. It is important, and regardless of if we think we have time for it or not, we need to make time for it. Because otherwise we would still be using words that are not socially accepted, such as colored or Negro or the R word or Lord knows what else is out there. And those are harmful in nature, and we need to make sure that we aren't using those terms. So, kind of just an all encompassing thing here. Political correctness is not to censor anything by any means, it's to make sure that we are using language that is correct and makes people feel comfortable. So that sums up my presentation here. So hopefully you guys learned something. If you do have questions, feel free to email me. I'd be more than happy to respond to those. And hopefully I'll see all of your smiling faces again soon. Thanks.